From binge eating battles to blissful purpose, Natalia Fomichenko proves high-achieving women can have it all: joy, fulfillment, freedom. If you're ready to stop surviving and start thriving, this episode is your wake-up call. Let's get started.
She said, and he's like, yeah, but you're sexy, but you're not a model. You almost like want to rebel against all this.
This is From Wounds to Wisdom with Barbie Moreno. Real talk, deep healing, and stories that turn pain into power. Let's dive in. Thank you for joining us on From Wounds to Wisdom. This is your host, Barbie Moreno, and today I have with us a guest who works with women, which is near and dear to my heart. So please welcome Natalia Fomichenko.
Thank you for having me, Barbie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you. So I know, like I said, working with women is what I do as well. I have my own reasons for my journey and why I work with women. Can you kind of give us some history on you, and then we'll go into what you do?
Sounds good. So I'm a coach, but this journey was not straightforward. I'm also a very much of a business person, and from the very beginning, I was chasing achievements and I was following that journey of, you go to the best university, and then you go to the most prestigious work, and then hopefully you become, I don't know, a CEO. I don't know what I aspire to become, but somewhere along the journey, I realized that it's just a hamster wheel, just a chase, and it doesn't give me anything internally but stress.
Right.
And I ignored it back then. I thought maybe I'm weak. Maybe, something is wrong with me. And so I persevered. And as I persevered, this stress coupled with unfulfilling work, or rather not knowing what it is that I'm all about and why I'm here, it all translated into an eating disorder. That was my biggest challenge to hide back then. We grow from an adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I was trying to help myself overcome it, I started really getting interested in psychology, spirituality, basically anything. I've tried so many things just to help myself. And as I was going through this journey, if I ever am able to help myself, I would also want to help other women who are going through the same challenges. As it turned out, eating disorder was a symptom of me not knowing what's my purpose, not knowing what brings me joy. And that is what I help women now, finding their joy and fulfillment in their journey, career or beyond, and removing all those unnecessary stress induced symptoms.
I've noticed in my journey, I had an eating disorder as well. I know that there's a lot of women who do. What I have learned is that there's a couple of things, and I'd like to get your take on it. One is control, right? When you feel like you can't control anything else in your life, at least you can control that, or you think you can. And the other thing is that, I don't know how yours was, but I was a high achieving woman as well, but I never felt like, I don't know if I did it because of social reasons. Like I always had weight problems anyways for me. And so I felt like it kept me at a certain size. I don't know if that was your story, but give me an idea on what you feel like was the history, behind your eating disorder.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And I would like to specify mine was binge eating disorder. There are multiple. There's anorexia, bulimia. I had a period of sports bulimia where I would go to a gym at midnight trying to lose whatever binge I just had.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was binge eating. And you're right, it's control. I wanted to control something. I mean, something, at least something in my life, because I feel like, it's just my life is riding me as opposed to me riding my life. There was also a body image problem. I was never fat, but I was always very, very keen to be thin. And I think that has something to do with external validation. From my early years, thought that models are very, very pretty. And I occasionally received feedback that I look like a model. And to be frank, I do, but it was still not enough. And I remember I was dating my ex-boyfriend and his ex was a model. Somebody told me that I look like a model. And I turned to him and I'm like, oh, hear what she said. And he's like, yeah, but you're sexy, but you're not a model. So, things like this triggered me a lot. But on top of this, I think what was another driver was this sense of pleasure. I couldn't find as much pleasure in other things. And last thing is the a chance to escape. So sometimes when I got very, very overwhelmed with the world and I was just chasing and chasing and chasing, that was my way to go into my shell, to shut myself from the world and to just be there. It was my way to slow down. So yeah, there were multiple factors.
I know when you said the feel good, there's a lot that comes with that, right? So if you feel empty on the inside, putting food in feels good. There's
Hmm.
actually chemicals that go on in our brain when we eat too, right? Specific foods in particular that create us to have that good, feel good feeling. And I think a lot of people don't understand, especially high achieving people deal with the fact that, yeah, they might look amazing on the outside, but there's so much going on in order to maintain that image and to maintain, that success that internally there is a lot of struggle. What have
Hmm.
you found that you dealt with internally when you were going through this time in your life where it appeared on the outside that you were successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the whole problem stems from the fact that there is an internal struggle because that is what takes a lot of energy. Because when you are not accepting a part of yourself for any reason, then you got to fight it. And it's like in this movie where she's like fighting the part of herself that was younger. It's not useful to fight yourself. What you do is you're just losing your energy. And instead, is accepting both parts. And I think I was struggling with accepting a weak side of myself. I didn't feel whole back then. I had this image that a high achieving woman needs to be strong. I just couldn't let myself to be weak, and that weak part of me, and both sided, every coin has two parts, and that was, I guess, another driver.
Where did you get the idea of your value came from external factors?
Everything that I did required an observer for me to get it validated. I didn't have that part of myself who can tell me what's right and wrong in the sense that I would accept that opinion above all other people. Like now I understand. Now, if I am choosing something and I think that's a good choice, even if somebody else tells me before, it would make me feel so bad because I would think that especially if I trust that person. Now, I guess it's shifted. Now I can see the other side, something that tells me inside that I'm really happy where I am career-wise.
Mhm.
And I do have a room to grow, as we all do, but I'm really happy where I am, and that's enough. Even if somebody else tells me that, look, I do something else and that's better, good for you. So I got this internal platform support that I didn't have before.
And do you think you didn't have it before because you didn't get it when you were younger?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where a lot of our
Yeah.
root causes come from, right?
Yeah.
Were your,
Childhood.
yeah, were your parents the type that only recognized you when you achieved or did good or you were a good girl?
Yeah. Even though it wasn't very prominent in the sense that when parents would give you big presents if you did well at school, I always did well at school. From the very beginning, I was a straight A student. But I think it's more to do with a lot of responsibility in the early age. I had to grow up pretty quickly. My parents worked a lot and they did everything that they could. I took care of my little sister. Then when you grow up, you almost like want to rebel against all this. Like, yeah, you're like forgetting me. I don't know what I want, but I'm here. And maybe that was also her way to get attention.
I know that a lot of people, when they receive, like they get to a certain space and they feel like they're burnt out, there's also self-sabotage. Like, I don't
Oh yeah.
feel internally worthy of being in this space, or how can I maintain this, right? And so it's like, I'm just going to give it all up. because I don't think that I can maintain this, I'm not worthy of it, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, there are different self-sabotaging patterns, I guess. Quite a lot of energy, as we were talking before, when you fight, when one part of you fights the other part of you, it's exhausting. And so I'm really, really happy. I don't have to do this anymore. I don't think, I have this hypothesis that people don't become coaches or psychotherapists if they haven't gone through their own personal hell,
Yeah.
which I think is a great advantage because the people that we work with, they see it not in frameworks that we're offering, but in identity. And I think that's what gives hope to people.
I agree. And I feel like specifically like with coaches, like you have big people, like let's say Tony Robbins, right? And he has these great big conferences and then he has people that he's taught and trained and stuff. But it's the same formula over and over and over. Whereas I feel like when you come from experience and you're coaching, you come from understanding where that person's coming from and you can individualize it versus these very big programs, and that one's obviously one about business and stuff, but it's also about becoming who you're supposed to become, right? But these big programs, sometimes I feel like they lose the individual touch that's really about why that person is the way they're doing. You can tell
Mhm.
somebody like, oh, you have to do, XYZ amount of activities and tasks every single day to be successful. But if that person can't achieve that because they have other stuff that's going on, something's going on with them mentally, the way that they've trained themselves, they can't achieve that no matter how hard they try. They might have started off doing well, and then a couple weeks. That's why people who start off like losing weight in the beginning of the year, right? And
Yeah.
then they go back to their old patterns because they haven't retrained themselves.
Yeah, what you're saying is super right. You cannot make a change on the action, on the to-do level, unless you make a change in identity, on who you are level. So, for instance, if I want to lose weight or if I want to really achieve something in my career, I kind of want to mentally be that person who values the healthy lifestyle, who values the boundaries. As a result of being that person, with time, I will get all those things.
Yeah, I was just talking with some clients of mine a couple of days ago, and we were talking about they had done like manifestation, like affirmations, and they were like, they're in like, a ridiculous amount of debt now. All of a sudden, there's all of these problems, and they're like, how come we were working on manifestation, we were doing all these positive affirmations and everything, and it didn't work out? And I was like, because you're coming from a place of scarcity, right? And affirmations do you no good if you don't truly believe that you deserve, that's who you are and you embody that. You're basically coming from a place of, I don't have this, I want this. Like, what's your take on that? Because I know you are also very spiritual.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you can explain it spiritually, you can also explain it scientifically. If our brain has a great capacity to notice patterns. And so if we are seeing the world as scarce, as not enough, and it doesn't even have to be about money, it can be about yourself, your own self-worth. We program our brain by repeated action to notice those patterns. When you say this, you can almost start facilitating this change,
Right.
you know?
So it sounds like
Yeah.
what what I talk about too, it's awareness, right? So if you
Mhm.
say like, I have a good body, but then your body tenses up and it's like, yeah, no, 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 we don't believe that. You have to focus on the awareness that that's what the body's doing so that you can then be aware and then you can watch that. And from watching that, the awareness brings in that, and then you can work on that through various different exercises and all of those different things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mind and body are super interconnected. When you smile, usually when you're happy, but if you start smiling when you're unhappy, eventually the brain and mind catch up, and then you start feeling better. And
Mhm.
so the same logic applies to anything. And if you want to make a change, you first need to make sure your body feels safe in that change.
Yeah, and I noticed like you have to do it in small steps. And that's the other thing. I feel
Mhm.
like people want to go and like run a marathon and they don't understand like you have to just start with, 5 minutes a day if you start from nowhere. so that your body can get used to it, your mind can get used to it. It's so much easier to say, well, I'm going to go for a 5 minute walk versus I'm going to go run a mile if you're not a runner yet, you know?
Yeah, I think honestly, the secret of life is the small steps,
Mhm.
literally, and the patience to execute them.
Yeah.
Because this is the compounding effect of all the changes. And yet, all we want is just an instant change, but we are not even ready for this. I didn't develop my social media back then, and I was dreaming of like 100,000 followers. It's not about numbers, it's about feeling ready for who you are now and enjoying that because that's the stepping stone to what's next.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because when you were talking about social media and followers, my mind initially went to like, that is half the problem, right? So it's a different kind of achievement. And people will leave one career and then they go into something like this, and then they start qualifying their value by how many people are following or liking them. And I feel like that's a
Yeah.
whole nother trap that people get into when they think that they're getting out of the other trap, right?
Exactly. I think when you are getting out of the trap that has been built on external validations and external facades, at some point you will have to go and look inside because that's where all the foundation starts from.
Yeah, I agree. I think social media is a whole trap in and of itself, in my opinion. The fakeness of it. You need it oftentimes to succeed business wise.
I agree. There's lots of fakeness.
Do you have children?
I don't.
Yeah, I think that that's a whole different world too, especially if you're a high achieving person and you're trying to maintain being a parent and you're trying to maintain being a spouse and you're trying to like, wear all of these different hats. And it's another way to create a huge persona that crumbles.
Yeah. Do you have children?
I have two, yeah, and they drive me nuts and I love them. But I have to say, one thing I talk about is that my older daughter grew up with me as my high achieving self who needed to prove myself and wasn't present as much as I thought I was because I would show up, but I wasn't actually present. I was on my phone or my computer or thinking about, things when I was at like activities and stuff. So she's 17. She grew up with me more in that way until like the
Hmm.
last 5 to 10 years, which my son's 11, he grew up with me a different way. So they have very different attachment styles. If people don't know what attachment
Mm.
styles are, it's the way that, we interact with other people. I would call her anxious attachment, right? She's worried about people in her life, like leaving, I guess would be the best way
Hmm.
of saying, in various
Yeah.
different ways, right? And where my son is more, has like a secure attachment, right? Like he is just who he is. The world can just like surrender to him.
Yeah.
And it really depends on how your parents showed up at that time. And you can have one parent who parents two different kids very differently based on where they are in their life.
This is so fascinating. It's such a responsibility.
Yeah.
It's such work. I want to have children, but I recognize that it's not a walk in the park. In fact, I have an anxious attachment style, which I learned to sort of be mindful of. And it's funny because my partner, he has a secure attachment
Mm.
style. And in the very beginning of our relationship, I was like, oh my God, like, what if something is wrong?
Yeah. And the things that you do to evolve, they're going to trigger stuff. They're going to trigger
Hmm.
stuff in you that you didn't know that you have. The other thing about anxious attachment is that person's kind of always scanning for other people, right? Like to see what their mood is or whatever the case may be. But I find a lot of high achieving women are still constantly like, we feel and we're very intuitive. So we know if somebody's like in a bad mood.
All of these things make you who you are in a unique way. And so it's about awareness, knowing your triggers, recognizing it as an alarm, and that has nothing to do with reality most of the time. It's really important to just know yourself and know we all have strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
and
And it's a
there is
journey.
no exception.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The whole
Yeah.
life is a journey. And if you came in perfect, there'd be really no purpose in living it, right?
Hmm.
We live through
Be no
experiences.
fun.
Yeah, it'd be no
Hmm.
fun. Sometimes it's not fun, but yeah.
Yeah. We all have opportunities to change and to grow certain things, yet we ignore them because we feel like we're afraid or we're not ready. And then life throws to us another circumstance that is way heavier. And because otherwise, how do we learn?
Right.
And so, yeah, it's a combination of our choices too.
So on the podcast, I always ask that the guest gives a tool that people can take with them, something that they can, use today, not something that's like way down the future. So what is a tool that you teach for your clients that you feel like would be beneficial?
I think today we've discussed lots about fulfillment and how important it is for general enjoyment of your life and also for navigating such stress-related systems. So I've created my own formula of joy or fulfillment. There are three components. It's safety, it's purpose, it's fun or play. And so safety is basically making sure that your body and yourself feel safe. And I actually would argue that when people try to grow, they want to leave the safe zone, to go into the growth zone. You actually have to have your safety zone very established to then venture into the growth zone, because you have to have this foundation. And so the second element is the purpose. And that's basically what's really is meaningful to you. And how do you help other people? It's impossible to identify purpose in isolation. Because if you're focusing too much on yourself, you're not going to get out of your unhelpful thinking pattern. You actually have to go into the world and interact with others,
Right.
who you can help and through whose reflections you can learn more about yourself. And then the last bit is the play part, because otherwise it's just not working. Since we are kids, we learn through play and through games, and it's an essential element of our enjoyment or fulfillment of this life. And so if you don't have this element, think how you can really incorporate it. And of course, don't forget about the small steps, because everything starts with just a small step. The smaller, the better.
So break it down to a tool. So those are big general ideas. And if I'm listening, I'm like, great. So I need to know my purpose. I need to stay in a safe zone and I need to play. Give a tool.
Yeah. Practice safety. Practice safety through body awareness. The simplest tool and something to start with, to just build a habit of telling yourself that you are safe.
I agree. That helps the nervous system tremendously. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So how would people find you if they feel like they are aligned with you?
Yes, they can find me on LinkedIn by my name, Natalia Fomichenko. They can also check out my website, nataliafomichenko.com. And that would be it.
Very good. And we'll have all of that in the description. And we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Barbie. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks. If this story spoke to you, let's keep the healing going. Visit barbiemoreno.com for my online course, Awakening Your Worth in Healing Energy sessions, one-on-one coaching, and your free healing guide. Your next step is waiting.